Hello and welcome to episode 302 of Retro Encounter, RPGFan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I just took a vacation 100 years ago and thousands of miles away. We played the recent game, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. But before we go into more details, let me tell you who's with me on this journey. It is Niki Fakhoori.
Hello.
And Jono Logan.
Hey, Sollosi.
Niki and Jono, we played the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles very recently, but Jono, you played it considerably earlier because this is not exactly recent for these games. These were two 3DS games released in 2015 and 2017. They are the most recent games in Capcom's Ace Attorney / Gyakuten Saiban series, at different times called Phoenix Wright or Apollo Justice or Miles Edgeworth Investigations. There's about a dozen games in this series. These are the most recent two. The fan base has been thirsty for these since they came out in Japan, but we finally got them in July of this year, and now we're here to talk about them. But Jono, you even wrote a review of a fan translation of the first one some time ago, so you're well acquainted with these before this newer release. Is that right?
Yeah, back in the before times of January 2020, I imported a copy of the first game, and a fan translation group called Scarlet Study did a full translation of the first game, and it was theirs, and they put a lot of work into it. And to be frank, it was a pretty darn good translation.
They even included plenty of Sherlock Holmes puns right there in their studio name.
Yeah, exactly. They knew what they were doing. They loved Ace Attorney. I think some of the people that were involved in it were also involved in the Ace Attorney's Investigation 2 fan translation, which is also very, very good. But yeah, so I imported a copy of the game for the 3DS, and I figured out how to do the patch for the text, and it was great. Unfortunately, it was only the first game, which means that it ended on a cliffhanger, which we will be talking about soon. And I imagine, could you two imagine finishing the first game and then just being like, okay, that's it, no more for you?
That would have been frustrating. I don't know if quite maddeningly frustrating is where I'd go, only because they do give you like a villain to lock up and an intrigue to resolve in the final case of the first game, but they open way more doors than they close. And the second game has a much stronger finale and resolution to those threads. But Niki, is this your first time playing Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, or did you mess around with translations or the Japanese versions of the 3DS games?
No, this is my first time. The only thing I knew going into this game, one of them was a lie that actually turned out to be true, and the other thing was leg.
Yeah, Niki, I'm basically in the same boat. I did not play the 3DS games. I was holding out hope for translations of them. I even let's say bugged / needled some E3 employees at the Capcom booth at a couple E3s ago. But they would not say anything. They didn't want to get fired. But I knew a couple things like a couple character portraits. I definitely accidentally spoiled myself on a few character turns, but not every single surprise. And but I was really excited to play these when they came out as a package deal for multiple systems, not just the 3DS. I ended up playing these on Switch, and these are the best, or at least in my opinion, these are the best Ace Attorney games in several years. Almost every Ace Attorney game is really good, especially if you go in with the right expectation. Like don't treat this as a serious lawyer sim. This is a visual novel with some word puzzles and some law and investigation themed, adventure game exploration elements and puzzles. Very structured ones that haven't changed all that much in almost 20 years, but like this is just a really good one of those. I had so much fun playing this one through to the end, and I did the last couple cases in only 1 or 2 sittings. I was riveted. But Jono, you've had a couple years to ruminate over these. What's your overall impression of this duology?
First off, if I'm looking at it from a consumer point of view, oh my god, is this a value? You get 2 full-length Ace Attorney games plus just a massive amount of additional content. Like they've taken promotional videos. They've taken there's in the sound player, in a usual sound player, you get like a couple of the songs from the game. In this sound player, you get unreleased cuts and alternative versions of the songs from the game. So you get to hear really like where the developers were going and how to play. And there's just, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like do you remember 20 years ago when DVDs used to release like the amazing special editions that were just absolutely jam-packed with the features. You had to get like 2 DVDs. It was so packed. That's kind of what this feels like in terms of the additional content. So I think that if you're looking to buy an Ace Attorney game, this one is just really going to be worth your money.
Yeah, and when you say full-length Ace Attorney games, I mean, these are not short ones. Each one of them is at least a 30-hour journey, and you get 2 in the same package for $40 brand new. Niki, when we were talking about planning out this episode, didn't you think originally this was just the first game?
Yeah, these games are actually old. So I almost kind of forgot there was a second game.
Well, they're not too old.
Well, okay, listen, I had my own daily vigil moment when I saw that, like, the first game came out in 2015. Because it's like, oh my gosh, I was still, like, in my undergrad at that time. That's wild.
Well, now I feel super old.
How old was I in 2015? I don't even know how old I was in 2015. That's how long ago that was.
I can figure it out with some mental math, but I do not want to figure that out. But yeah, this is Ace Attorney Chronicles plural, which and with this on top of all of the sweet extras that Capcom is giving us, makes it a pretty compelling package overall. And because the number of connections to the main series are, tenuous at best, main series, I should say, previous games, this is maybe a really good first Ace Attorney for someone as well, even though that is not the case for the three of us.
It's really hard to beat this as a jumping on point in terms of there are a few little references, and if you played the previous games, you're going to recognize them. But on the whole, it's an entirely new cast. And yeah, you're playing the ancestor of Phoenix, but not really. Like there's no real connection aside from the two characters kind of look alike, and they share a surname.
I almost don't agree that this is a good starting point, only because personally I think this is the best in the series. But even if you don't think it's the best in the series, I find it to be like significantly better written than like Ace Attorney 1 and 2. And depending on the kind of person like playing, they might get kind of like thrown off by going back to those original games and like that difference in writing.
So you're worried that this might set the bar too high, and going back to the older games, the team hadn't quite figured themselves out as much. So not only will the writing and case design be inferior, but there won't be as many incredibly detailed animations that were surprising me with every new case in Great Ace Attorney.
Yeah, I mean, like, the graphics make sense. I mean, I think this is visually like an insanely beautiful game, but like, even if you're willing to like overlook like, oh yeah, these were Game Boy Advance games, these are in 2D, of course they're different like visually, just the quality of the writing is insanely good in these games. Every case is so thematically strong and connected. The characters are so well developed. The mysteries are really good. I really only had like one moment where I struggled to figure out the logic. I can't think of a Deus Ex Machina that happened.
Okay, there is kind of one Deus Ex Machina. You might want to call it Regina Ex Machina, in fact.
As close as you can get to God, at least in the English, at least in the Victorian England.
But Niki, you do have a point. I think this is one of the best written Ace Attorney games. The case design is good. The logic of the cases is, sometimes you have to deal with silly adventure game logic, but at least it's always there. It's like, oh, I have to check the newspaper one last time before I present it, or oh, I know that they mentioned this witness in the autopsy and the witness statement, but I'm supposed to present only one of those two. Like there's the ultra specificity that you get with adventure game puzzles sometimes, and that's in every Ace Attorney game, but it's not that bad in this one. And the strengths of Ace Attorney, which is the very vibrant characters, the fun mysteries, the good writing and dialogue, the satisfaction of pulling off a successful case, like all of those are incredibly strong form in Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Chronicles is the name of the collection. The first one, or you could call them Great Ace Attorney 1 and 2. Their localized names are Adventures and Resolve, technically. And going back to something Jono said way earlier, the second game does a much better job of resolving literally resolving all of the threads from the first game in a way that makes the first game maybe a little unsatisfying, but that just makes me think that the second game is, has more closure and is overall better, but they're both great.
Yeah, the second game is such a direct sequel that I think that someone could pick up pretty much any Ace Attorney game and play it and they would enjoy itself because each one tells a self-contained story. I don't think that these games do. I think that I think putting them in a 2-pack was a very smart move because I don't think that either one of the games stands alone. I think the first one it's a good game, but I think it's fairly weakened by the fact that there are so many plot threads that are unresolved. And the second game, I don't think you could play the second game without playing the first. I just don't think that you would or should. I think you'd be completely lost. As a package together, I think they are one of the best Ace Attorney games ever made. As standalones, I don't think they stand alone.
You really have to play the first one to get all the details in the second, especially since the second case of the second game is a direct sequel to, I think, the third case of the first game, the Sosuke Natsume one.
Yeah, it takes place during the first game.
Yeah, they flash back in the middle of a future back. It's a little narratively twisted, but I think there is like they do endeavor to resolve some things in the final case of game one, where there's a plot with state secrets and wiretapping that isn't really present in the second game. And they do have a suitably hateable villain for that final case of game one, a good old Eggert Benedict, whose real name is much less funny to say.
Oh, Eggert, my man. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's my boy.
He is very well dressed.
That guy took a class in Ace Attorney pun game names.
I mean, if it wasn't for the absolutely fabulous cape, bottle, and glasses of Barack von Zieks, good old Benedict would have been the best dressed person in Ace Attorney 1, but the cape. I cannot handle that Alucard ass cape that Barack von Zieks has for the entirety of both games.
I can't handle von Zieks, period.
It's like they took the menace of Manfred von Karma from the first Ace Attorney, but then they gave him a personality more like Edgeworth's, where he is, somehow cold, calculating, rude, and sassy all at the same time, but you end up having to defend him and befriend him in a way that makes you think this guy's made on the list of potential boyfriends. He has, and there is a list in these games.
There he is. Oh my god! Listen, I love him.
Niki, did you just drop your headphones because you got so excited?
I screeched. I love him. Listen, you gotta understand, okay? So good. He's just so perfect. Listen, leg, but also
oh god! I mentioned the wine, but not the leg stomp. Oh, holy crap!
Oh my god! Listen, I listen. That was like the one of two things that I spoiled myself. The other one being the lie. But listen, if I hadn't prepared myself by seeing the leg beforehand, I think I would have gone. Like, I would have transcended. I would not be able to complete the game. I would be gone from this existence the moment I saw the leg. Oh my god.
To be honest, there were points when you were playing this game that I was actually getting somewhat concerned that you would do just that.
Listen, this game is pain. It should have been set in France because I own a bakery now.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, for those who are not of the francophone persuasion, the French word for bread, pain, is spelled pain, and this game spelled pain for Niki multiple times during her playthrough.
Okay, I'm good now.
All right, are you sure? Au bon plan?
No, I'm not sure at all. But that struck me as very funny.
All right, well, sacre bleu, it's time to get back to the podcast. This game does betray the player a little bit by teasing this, frankly, awesome relationship between the main character, Ryosuke Naruhodo, who's obviously an ancestor of Phoenix Wright, and his best friend, Kazama Asogi. And is it Kazama or Kazuma? Kazuma, right. Sorry, there is an important Kazuma and Kazuma in the Yakuza games, and I have mixed them up for the past year of playing Yakuza games. that's neither here nor there. But let's talk about the Kazuma in Great Ace Attorney. He's sort of your ally mentor character for the very first case of the game, when you're always battling against a member of the Payne Ouchie family. That's Payne spelled Payne, and not like French bread. But and it's Kazuma is about to engage on an exchange program to learn from the British law system, but on the way over, he appears to be killed in an accident in a story that is the first time they twist around a Sherlock Holmes short story, one of several times, where you meet the Sherlock Holmes facsimile Herlock Sholmes, which is the same name that Maurice LeBlanc used for his facsimile of Holmes in the old Arsène Lupin short stories from around the same time.
He didn't get sued, so hey, Capcom figured they could get away with it.
Oh no, he got sued to hell and back. It was one of the first high profile intellectual property cases in history.
Really? I thought he was getting sued and then he changed the name because of that.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. Like, he was getting sued. He either was already using Herlock Sholmes or immediately changed it to Herlock Sholmes. But whether the Conan Doyle family got, or I should say Doyle family, whether the Doyle family got a payout from it or not, it was very high profile at the time and did, not necessarily set the first precedent, but was an important intellectual property struggle. But and again, he also used the name John Wilson instead of John Watson, which Great Ace Attorney also does. But back to the case, the Speckled Band is one of the most famous Sherlock Holmes short stories, where the culprit ends up committing murder once and almost committing it a second time by releasing a snake into a room through a ventilation duct. And in the second case of Great Ace Attorney 1, there is a snake that goes through a ventilation duct, but in a semi-twist, the sort of the events of the case end up playing out in a different way, where there's a cat and a stowaway ballerina, and Kazuma trips and falls and badly injures himself, going into a coma. And the player believes that Kazuma died from this accident, but he ends up coming back in the second game, which I think, Niki, is what you were referring to as the lie.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the lie, right? Because when the first game came out, the only thing I saw, and I knew it because of the context of the Twitter account, but they made this post and it was, he lived. And this was before the second game. So I'm like, oh, it's fine. I can go into this game and I know he's not going to die. And then he dies. And I'm like, wow. Like those like middle school things, she believed, he lied. That's how I felt. Like right through the Kokoro, I'm like, Soseki, you need to, help me Tasukete Kudasai. My Kokoro is Brokuro. I can't go on. It was too much for me. And I cried and I screamed and I yelled. And that's how I felt.
Yeah, I was surprised by this. I thought Kazuma would maybe have a character turn and become like the Edgeworth of the game, but then he just straight up croaked and is not in the rest of Great Ace Attorney 1. And I was and is a presence over the whole game. And that stressed me out so much that partway through playing the first one, I did check spoilers, like, is he really dead or not? And they told me that he comes back in the second game, dressed like, I don't know, Crow from Persona 5 or Donny Osmond a little bit, but and so that relieved me somewhat. But the fact that they pull the rug out from under you with this character is a big shock, and that leads to our hero Ryunosuke taking Kazuma's spot, learning the British legal system, and he takes on Kazuma's childhood friend and legal assistant Susato Mikotoba as his legal assistant. So like a lot of the first game is the Ryunosuke and Susato show, but they meet Herlock Sholmes, the somewhat foppish, definitely brilliant, definitely scatterbrained, great detective who is maybe the most important NPC that doesn't take the stand with you in this game. So, and Herlock deserves a discussion all his own.
I don't know. I wasn't really surprised when he died, because I remember this was a while ago for me, but as I was playing the first game, I remember thinking, okay, there's parallels here with the first Ace Attorney. Mia ends up dead. I suspect that it's going to be a similar thing here, where basically he gets fridged. as a motivation for the main character.
Yes, and that is sort of what happened, but I was hoping that the game would be a little bit better than that.
And it turned out to be better than that. Just
no, it turned out
game.
Awesome.
Yeah, in the next game.
Yeah, but also it puts it in this game in an interesting historical context. I think the year that this game takes place in is either 1902 or 1903, because that corresponds to the year that Soseki Natsume was in England. Soseki listeners, hopefully you know this from playing the game. Soseki Natsume is a very famous Japanese novelist. He wrote a book called I Am a Cat that is like well known as a satire and is often taught in Japanese schools. And he, in real life, Natsume spent a year in England to study English literature and had such a bad time that he never left Japan again after returning. And they twist that around by giving us 2 cases co-starring, or I guess 2.5 maybe, co-starring Natsume, that definitely highlights the awful time he had living in a cramped room in London. But rolling that back, this game takes place in 1902 or 1903. Imperial Japan is on the rise. They had already modernized their military and beaten, I think this is after the first Sino-Japanese War, but before the Russo-Japanese War. So they were still looked at as a backwards nation a little bit by Europe, which again stopped happening after Japan annexed Korea and then beat up Russia. But you get that Easterners being treated as exotic, and definitely some racist attitudes on the part of the European characters in this game. Like they think Easterners aren't trustworthy, and that's especially true of a character we've already mentioned, Barak von Zieks, who is the lead prosecutor of this game. He's the Godot or the Edgeworth or the Franziska von Karma, what have you, of this game. And he does not like Japanese people in a way that always came across as condescending, and sometimes even worse than that.
I mean, from the very first moment, you recognize that this isn't just run-of-the-mill Victorian racism. There is something deeply personal going on here as to why he is treating you like this.
And, I mean, he develops the begrudging respect for you over the course of 2 games, like a lot of villain characters or rival characters do in Ace Attorney. But it rings especially true for the last 2 cases of the second game, where Kazuma comes back, not from the dead, but from his coma, to be, and he's dressed all in white, while Ryunosuke is always dressed in his black student uniform. And you end up defending Von Zieks from the establishment and a giant conspiracy, with Kazuma being in the prosecutor chair. And that was just an epic setup. I loved everything about it.
Every day I cry.
It works extraordinarily well, especially because the relationship up to that point has been, I mean, their relationship is foundational to everything every action that has been done up to that point has been based around the idea that you are there to fulfill his mission. And all of a sudden you're facing him across the courtroom. And it's just a really, really brilliant turnabout of expectations. And it's painful in a lot of ways, as I'm sure Niki will testify.
Yeah. Oh, it hurts. Everything hurts. Everything about it is just like, oof, ouch, owie. So where do we start? Do we start with when we reveal that Kazuma was not the Mia, but the Edgeworth? Do we start with Von Zieks also being the Edgeworth, so he can have 2 prosecutor boyfriends? Where do we start with this?
I don't know. I mean, we're jumping around a lot and we're spoiling everything, but listener, I hope you gathered that, because Spoilercast is right there in the title. I don't know. My least favorite case in both games is probably the Natsume case from the first game, where the resolution is there was a husband and wife having a fight and a knife fell out of the window and landed in a lady's back. Like, that's pretty contrived and a little dissatisfying. But then they give you a turnabout there and make that just the part 1 of a much, much more interesting case in part 2, where Natsume gets framed again. And they bring in, utility charges into the case, which was a little bit surreal, having that be literally part of my job, and have that twist into a pretty cool revenge story. Also establishing Soseki Natsume as the unluckiest NPC in Ace Attorney history. Or maybe second unluckiest after old Larry Butts.
Oh, I was going to say Maggie Bird.
Maggie Bird and Larry Butts are both have had their trials and tribulations over the years. Mm. But like every time this game seemed to do something that was confusing or foreshadowing, it paid off by the end of those last 2 cases. But they give you like 2 Edgeworths. Strongheart is like half the corrupt judge from Investigations 2 and half Von Karma, like, because like almost the entire British establishment is the final boss of this game, basically.
Oh, but he did the Damangant. I knew it. I knew from the beginning, and he did it. He did it. He clapped for us. Let's go. Oh my gosh.
And but now that we're living in 2021 or 2017 when this game came out, there were so many more frames of animation in that clap.
Oh my gosh. Can you believe he did it? Oh my gosh. I don't know. Listen. Oh my gosh.
I have to admit that I suspected him too. The second that he showed up, I was like, oh, this guy is.
I saw that guy's haircut and I knew he was the final villain of the game.
Yeah, it's like this is obviously not a protagonist. This guy is an antagonist. I was disappointed with the resolution of the game. I have to admit, of the second game.
You do not like Herlock Sholmes dancing on top of Strongheart's corpse?
I loved the ending of the second game. The circumstances were ridiculous, and who was ordering who to kill who, plot contrivances got a little bit twisted, but the finale of Sholmes coming in at the last second to save you twice with a listening device, and I was already questioning the technology of this game because just personal photography was not at this level in the real 1902. But then they invent streaming video and holograms just for the final case.
It went too far for me.
Yeah, so Sholmes.
I couldn't do the suspension of disbelief. Everything up to that point, I was like, oh yeah, okay. And the second they came up with holographic technology at the beginning of the 20th century, I was like, I can't do it. They could have done this with, like, if they had done something like long-term walkie-talkie or something like that, I would have been able to suspend my disbelief that far. And I would have been like, okay, Sholmes, he created a long-term communication.
No, I mean, there was a walkie-talkie with the bunny toys.
Yeah, with the bunny toys. I was buying that, and I thought that if he could have done that, but the entire the entire courtroom, and that was the reveal. It was, well, we weren't just listening to you, we were listening to everything, and the Queen was listening too. But instead, they gave the Queen like a front row seat in the holodeck, and I could not suspend my disbelief to that extent. I like the resolution, but
So, some version of a live video feed, and then a live projected hologram, and then after that, the one thing I wanted that they didn't give us is they did not give us Ace Attorney animated Queen Victoria. I wanted that.
I wanted it too.
Mm-hmm.
It was sad that we didn't get that.
But then he catches on fire. That breakdown was so good.
Oh God, I know, even though they aren't actually, they don't actually kill anyone. I refer to when a witness or a villain breaks down after they realize they can't win. I call those death scenes, and we got a couple really good death scenes in this game. But a more understated one when Judge Jigoku is revealed as the killer of the detective. Is it Grayson? No,
Gregson.
No,
Gregson.
baby.
Yeah, oh my God, I was not expecting Gregson to croak, but
I wasn't either.
I swear to you. Okay, Gregson. Can we just say for 1 second, Gregson is holy moly. Listen, at the end of the first game, Gregson, I hated him because he sold out Gina to my man Ashley. And I was like, you did not just sell out Gina to my man Ashley. And then you know what he did? He did this thing that we call character growth. He did it with his own agency, his own actions. He took Gina under his wing, gave her a reason to better herself and become a detective. And we stand. And I was like, oh my God, Gregson, I don't hate you anymore. You're a cool guy. And then you know what he did? He fucking died. And I almost cried. I was so legitimately upset.
I couldn't believe it either. And like Gregson and Lestrade are both detectives that sometimes clash with Holmes in the Holmes novels and short stories. But to have him, Gregson, as a detective who is sometimes your adversary, sometimes your best friend. He dotes on Iris, which is very cute every time. But then for him to, be a bit more of an obvious ally when he starts to mentor Gina, and then die, and then you learn about the circumstances of his death that he was an agent of the Reaper who was killing criminals in secret. I didn't know what to think about him anymore. I was completely thrown for a loop until like when you see his last few scenes in flashback, you realize, oh, this was a man that was in pain from all of this, and his actions at the end were his way of trying to make good, and it just made me like him even more at the end.
Exactly. He does something about it. It's not like, oh, he died and now, oh, that's how he gets redeemed. No, he was working towards that redemption. He earned that redemption. Even though he was willing to sell out Gina in the first game, he bettered himself. Oh my gosh. And then he was just gone. The end. And I was like, no, I'm sad. No, my fish and chips, man.
And his he eats so many greasy potatoes over the course of both games. Holy crap. They're like his potato munching animations were great. But going back to the person that kills him, Jigoku, the judge from the first case of the first game. I knew
he was a bad guy the whole time, by the way. Again, I knew it.
He has a bad guy beard. Those villain haircuts never, ever lie. But he ends up shooting Gregson before the fourth case, and you ended up having to find him in an investigation sequence that I want to spend at least 35 minutes on. But,
oh my god!
Yeah, but going back, Jigoku's death scene is he does a couple Ace Attorney classic hands slams on the podium, so many and so intensely that he smashes the entire witness stand, and I loved every second of that.
Because that's what he did before.
Yeah, they mentioned him breaking one 10 years earlier in a different trial, and you see him do it again, and I loved it.
It was great. Yeah, this was a twist that I didn't see coming, because this is a lot like, well, frankly, this is a lot like if like Gumshoe was murdered in Turnabout Big Top. And it's just like, I just did not see it coming.
Or, well, I don't want to spoil this one, but it's kind of like the end game twist in Dual Destinies. But
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but a little bit less intense. So many characters go on different journeys in this game. The whole time I'm thinking Sholmes is either a genius or an idiot, who is selfish, like the Holmes from the books and the Holmes of the Benedict Cumberbatch show. But at the very end, you realize that everything that he did, from hiding stuff from Iris to deliberately having Kazuma sent back home, but instead of faking his death and keeping it from Ryunosuke and Susato, was like, this is a guy who genuinely cares, but his personality is so eccentric and he enjoys keeping secrets so much that he doesn't always communicate it that well. And when you get like the multi-hit combo at the end of Iris believing that she was the daughter of John Wilson because of him signing some documents that she found, and accidentally making him, because Iris Wilson is a genius tea brewer and inventor and writer somehow, and she's 10. So in the world of this game, Holmes and Wilson are the stars of a series of short stories, and the player is like, oh, obviously like Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, of course. But then you realize that because of some mistaken identity, Iris believes she's John Wilson's daughter. She's not, and believes that John Wilson was Holmes's partner. He's not. It ends up being Mikotoba, Susato's dad, and a beautifully mustached mentor character. And that leads to maybe my favorite part of the entire game. We get to play an investigation sequence, which are, their own crazy brands of 3D exploration and word association. Basically a mini game that you end up playing 8 or 9 times over the course of the games. But with Mikotoba, instead of Ryunosuke correcting Sholmes's crazy conjectures, and then he does a little tippy tap dance in between each one, and it's the best. I want a game that's only this.
You're right. That's what I was thinking. You know why? Here's what they got to do. Capcom, I hope you're listening. This is what you got to do.
We're going past the future.
So the next game is going to be Ace Attorney Investigations -1, and it's going to be Sholmes and Iris going to Japan. You're welcome. Anyways, oh my god.
Ooh. Who is our first person perspective star here? Is it Iris? Is it Sholmes? Or are we bringing it back to Mikotoba again?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say Sholmes, just because, I guess people would like that.
But I like him as not the main character, only because he does so much as an NPC.
That's true. It could be Mikotoba.
I like, maybe it's just because I really like Mikotoba, and he's like a top 4 character in the game for me. But I liked first person perspective him doing those investigations in a way, because that is a lot like what the best Sherlock Holmes stories are. It's John Watson as the first person narrative and Holmes as this like amazing third party with Watson like treating like looking at him with complete admiration and awe. Like that's the vibe of a lot of of all the best Sherlock Holmes stories. Like Sherlock Holmes is an untouchable genius, and the first person main character is a little gullible but trustworthy. So like having a Mikotoba and Sholmes sequence at the end was awesome. But let's talk about those mini games a little bit. Like again, Holmes is definitely brilliant for some of the stuff he pulls off, but also kind of not brilliant, because whenever he does one of his great deductions, he gets so many details wrong that in the second half of the game, you do a course correction, basically, changing words of the deduction to suss out what actually happened. And those were really, really fun, mostly because of the theater of them, and because you're and because the sort of search and find nature of them is fun to do, but really makes it hard to figure out Sholmes, because like, is he a genius? Is he not? How much does he know? It turns out he knows a lot, and maybe he's deliberately making mistakes so that you can better understand the case.
Yeah, he's trying to recreate the magic of working with Mikotoba, but he's not there, so he has to do it like this, because Ryunosuke is not Mikotoba.
I think Ryunosuke might be a little bit more smarter and capable than Phoenix Wright, because because Phoenix Wright is hella dumb sometimes over the course of those games.
He's a bumbling idiot, but in a lovable way.
Yeah, it was almost weird seeing him be smart and aloof for parts of Ace Attorney 4. Apollo Justice. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
But like Ryunosuke is a little bit more serious, definitely intelligent, but also, has plenty of suffering and reaction shots in court.
Yeah, his problem is that he has no confidence, whereas Phoenix's problem is he's never read a law book in his life.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I believe in Ryunosuke's competence more than Phoenix's. And we should mention Phoenix's name in Japanese is Ryuji Naruhodo, so it's a much clearer connection there.
Which is something that it wasn't even a problem I had with the game. I mentioned it in my review. It's that originally I think a lot of people thought that the reason why this didn't get localized earlier is because of the Sherlock Holmes issues. I don't necessarily think that's it, because I think the Sherlock Holmes solution was obvious from the start. I just think that this is, I say in my review, that it's not just a prequel about Phoenix Wright's ancestor, it's the origin of how the entire Japanese justice system of the original game developed, because the experiences in this game directly shaped that court. But since Ace Attorney takes place in California, that direct connection is lost. And I feel that it lost a little bit of emotional resonance and like the stakes of it all, because in this game, you get to see how the court was built, but it's not the court that we see, if that makes sense.
I think maybe it would resonate more strongly if the original Phoenix Wright, if all of the other Ace Attorney games had been localized more literally, and we always knew they took place in Japan. I mean, that would make
instead of Japanifornia, yeah,
exactly, and that makes them a little bit less special, I think, because like the Japanifornia nature of the Ace Attorney games is part of their charm, I think. But I almost look at this as like, yes, it informs what the court system becomes, and like one that we recognize from the original games. But I think it stands on its own as just a fun courtroom drama with the somewhat more unique setting of Meiji Restoration Japan. Because again, this was the point in Japan's history when it was westernizing it heavily. Again, mostly from it, like I know it mostly from a historical perspective of Imperial Japan and their military. But it sort of fits that Meiji Japan would be doing this, and the historical context is interesting, at least. And because I mean, again, the final boss of Ace Attorney Investigations, Edgeworth, is diplomatic immunity, and they fold that into this one a couple times. And but I think the historical context of this game is interesting, and the drama and writing is awesome. And even if it makes it seem a little bit more separate from the Ace Attorney games we know and love, I'm just so happy it's in my life right now, because I miss those days.
No question.
I miss those years where it seems like we were getting a new Ace Attorney like every 2 years or so, because they had a a bunch a backlog of them to translate from when was it, like when was the first Ace Attorney on DS localized, like 05, 04 maybe?
I think it was 05. I think it was released, was it on Game Boy? I think it was on Game Boy Advance in 2001.
Yes, yeah, but I'm like, again, speaking from a North American strictly perspective, like from say 05 to 17, it felt like we were getting one every year or two, and that was awesome, and I missed that feeling, and it was so much fun going back to these.
And at Sollosi, I am in no way, shape, or form saying that this is not I think it's an absolutely brilliant game. I think it's, like I said, I think it's probably one of the best games in the entire series. I'm just pointing out that we're missing that direct connection between the original games and this one, because ours take place in America, whereas the original ones take place in Japan. That's all.
But you see, but you do not observe. Here's where you're wrong. The key is in Sholmes himself. So in the original Japanese, where the whole series takes place in actual Japan, they have the real Sherlock Holmes. However, in the English release, it's Herlock Sholmes. It's an alternate universe branching out. And in this universe with Sholmes, that is when they become Japanifornia. And the reason why Sholmes always gets his deductions a little bit wrong is because all of the alternate universes stem from him. And so he is looking into the alternate universes when he is doing his deduction. So
he's hearing the echo of a neighboring universe that is that is confounding his deduction in our universe.
Exactly. He saw him eat the soap, and he's just getting it confused.
So are we going into like a Phoenix Wright into the Ace Attorney-verse kind of thing going right now?
Yes.
I'm actually down for that, yep.
So Iris is the star child.
We got it. I'm telling you, this is all very meticulously planned out.
You can't see me doing this, but I'm slamming both palms on my desk very emphatically.
Don't break it. That's apparently that's a crime that you will get thrown in jail for, or possibly deported from Victorian England.
This is a very old and crappy desk, and if I go to court over this, they will probably give me money somehow. But one thing that we've mentioned a couple times that I still blew my mind every time was how lush these animations are. Like I feel like I feel like I'm going back to the, I think, third case of the first game. They didn't have to have the maid wife pour tea onto her husband's cup only for it to overflow and have him flail everywhere. They didn't have to do that 15 times, but they did. like all these animations feel like they were like a second too long, but in a way that like you love their audacity for making that choice. You know what I mean? It's like these animations are too long and drawn out, but they're impressive, and they just wanted, you could tell they just wanted to do them this way, and I love them for it. I loved them. I loved the weird robotic moments of movements of the engineer guy from Case 3.
Drebber, my man, yes.
And they took his name as they did from a lot of different characters, from a minor character from the Sherlock Holmes short stories. Where are we? I love how when Ginny gets a dog named Toby, he gets like they meticulously animate him jumping into her arms, jumping out of her arms, sniffing and doing various puppy things. Like this game feels over animated, but in a way that is like just made me love it more instead of be annoyed by it.
When boyfriend 1 Von Zeeks throws the chalice and boyfriend 2 Kazuma is next to him, he will duck a second early because he sees it coming. Oh my god. Oh my god. Listen, when he throws the wine into the gallery or whatever it's called, oh my god. When he points and he does that build up and it seems like he's gonna just smack you, but then he slows down. Oh my god. Anyways.
Yeah. Barak von Zeeks' points are way slower and more deliberate. Like exactly. in a way that he's like creeping up on you, and they don't have him just smash his chalice. He smashes it in his hand, or throws it into the fire, to have his assistant duck when Kazuma's his assistant for a couple of cases, or he takes the bottle and throws it over his shoulder, or he does the leg stomp.
Leg! Oh my
there's-
god, leg!
There are
Listen,
so
oh
many
my god.
animations.
Leg, listen, leg. That's it. Best game. 500 out of 10. Best game of all time. Leg.
They have parts where Ryunosuke paces back and forth in front of the jury, and they never have that perspective of the defense attorney in previous Ace Attorney games.
He also has legs. They all have legs.
And there's some major sword play also in this. There's legs and swords and monocles.
The swords touched, anyways.
Whoa!
It's true. At the end of the game, the swords touch. It's true. I saw it. It was right there.
And the final move of the game is finding a secret haiku and then searching the last piece of evidence to unscrew it to find the hidden will. It is so beautifully mystery novel convoluted that I loved it.
It's in the sword. Anyways, listen. Oh my god. Listen, can we talk about this? This was the biggest brain play that they ever did. Okay, I'm going to tell you the biggest
more than me
brain
tap dancing, because
listen,
I don't know.
Oh my god, that was big brain, but this is like galaxy brain, let me tell you. So, Kazuma does a bye-bye, and you're like, oh no, does that mean he's the Mia of the game? But then you get the flashback where he says, my sword cuts through evil. And you're like, uh-oh, that's Mitsurugi. The sword that cuts through evil, that's Edgeworth. So he's going to have a great revival like Edgeworth. And then, you know what they did? This is the galaxy brain part. They combined the two. So not only does Kazuma have a great revival like Edgeworth, but his outfit is way too tight, just like Mia's. Biggest brain play of all time. Absolute god tier development.
He's the Mia and the Edgeworth.
Yes! Oh my god!
This game has less supernatural elements than the other Phoenix Wright games do, because there isn't any body possession or magatamas.
But everyone can read Ryunosuke's mind, though.
It's based in science. Well, quote unquote science.
Yes, we're having 1903 holographic projectors in live video.
Listen, it's fine because that whole game has the big themes were like the future and trust in the law, but also journalism and the spread of information, because journal articles and the way people receive information was a big thing in every single case. And then in the last case, it was the future hologram thing, which is like the more advanced information giving. And then Sholmes dances on the body of Strongheart. So, I mean, it's great.
I can't. Yeah.
we went from telegrams to dancing holographic projections in the same case in perhaps 20 minutes apart.
All I'm gonna say is that they had the little bunny, right? And he pulled the bunny's ears and it pulled on Sholmes' ears, right? But then Sholmes pulled on the ear on his little thing, but what did Ryunosuke say? Wow, it pinched my butt. So thanks, Sholmes. I know what you're up to. I know what you're trying to do, huh? Okay, I see how it is. That's all I'm gonna say.
Their elementary walkie-talkie, instead of using a tone, has sympathetic rabbit pinching. So did Ryunosuke make a mistake putting it in his pocket instead of in his ear? Or
Sholmes knew he would do it. This was the whole plan. He planned this all out.
He knew he was going to put him in that rear pants pocket.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Sholmes is a step ahead of everybody.
He is on this whole other level. Oh my god. I'm going to cry. Everything about this game is so good.
There are a few things in it that I would argue didn't land properly, but on the whole, I agree with you. The game is incredible.
And I think there were still... I think they sort of overtalk sometimes. Like, they'll have... something will happen in court, and then three people will react the same way or repeat what was said in a way that sometimes you feel like a book that's 200 pages long could have been 190 and been just fine. Like I sometimes think there's a slightly overwrought dialogue in the Ace Attorney games, not just this one, but in several of them, and I felt that a little bit. But I think they've also streamlined the design a little bit. There's less pixel hunting. Because sometimes in the previous games, you couldn't move on until you found that one little thing in the environment. And they communicate that these things, like small things like that, way better in this game. It's the the game design for an event flagging is a little bit less oppressive in these, but that's just that's making the game design gentler while still, like having the player feel like they're accomplishing something. They do one thing that is, again, so outside the realm of what real courts do that it made me twitch a little bit. You don't go up to jurors individually and demand they explain why they feel a certain way. That's the antithesis to a jury trial, but having but having multiple points of view and then having them contradict, that was enough of a change to the puzzle gameplay that I thought it was at least a fun addition of some variety. I don't think this game innovates from previous Ace Attorney games in structure or narrative design that much, but it's just one of the best of one of those, especially the second game. That I don't know what Ace Attorney game I would recommend first to a first-time player. It still might be the original trilogy, because that might be nostalgia talking, because I haven't played those in a decade.
I played the first one again, not recently, but a few years ago, and it's still really good.
Okay, even the dregs of the Steel Samurai case?
Well, everything has its low points, but this game does too. I feel that there are a lot of things that were introduced in this game which I really, really liked, which I was let down by. Like, okay, the one that actually bugged me the most, which I was really hoping for, was the first case of the second game, The Adventure of the Blossoming Attorney, where Susato becomes, like, she masquerades as a male student, so she can stand in court as a defense attorney.
I was never more eager to see someone's look in this game than when we first hear from her from a first-person perspective, and then a little bit later get a trial perspective. I wanted to see those pants.
Oh my god, what a case. She got married. I'm so proud of her. Yes!
Her best friend wants to be more than friends.
Yes, oh my god, you see the parallels?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
My problem with it was that it was a beautiful setup. She had this moment of triumph where she succeeded in court in a way that she had never gotten the opportunity to, because she was always counsel. And that was it. That plot point never came into play at any other point in the game. Like, I was thinking, this might have just been me writing fanfic in my head, but I was hoping that given the somewhat more women can hold positions of authority in the English law system, I was really hoping that she would get to stand as a lawyer at some point in England, because I felt they set it up and then they just kind of let it drop off, and it didn't really pay off at anything. I thought they set up a really interesting piece of character development, and they just didn't go anywhere with it. She just kind of ended up back where she started in the first game, which was standing as counsel and making suggestions rather than, being the one who screams objection. I felt that was a missed opportunity.
So the game could have taken a more empowering stance if they gave her even just one case.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was the head of forensics was a woman, and like the chief mortician, and like in my mind, it would have made sense if, obviously she wasn't allowed to stand in the Japanese court as a woman, but I can't think of a reason why they couldn't let her do it in the English court.
Well, no, but the English court also mentioned that they forbade women.
I know, but that's a matter of writing. And considering how many other powerful women were in positions in the legal profession in the English court, I just don't see why she couldn't have stood. It just seemed weird to me that they brilliantly set this up. They created a brand new character model. They gave her this position of power where she finally got the form to show what she can do when she is unrestrained from being the assistant or the counsel. And then they didn't go anywhere else with it. They didn't do anything else with it. It just kind of, it just felt like they needed an opening case for the game so they could they could reteach the mechanics.
Yeah.
And the only person that was kind of available was her. And I think it was, The Adventures of the Blossoming Attorney. Yeah, she blossomed, and then that was it. And I felt that was a massive missed opportunity in the game.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like maybe they could have rewritten the second case to be not a flashback, but like I'm here now, and I'll do this case while you convince Strongheart to get your license back or whatever. They could have done that.
Or even given her like half of the third case.
That would have been so funny.
If they if Ryunosuke had been put out of commission, even if it was her taking on her disguise as his cousin again.
Yeah.
But I think that the Ryunosuke versus Kazuma scenes are really crucial, and even though the game sort of does the Ace Attorney Justice for All thing, where the final setup ends up being basically the prosecution and defense and witnesses working together to take care of a third party, avoiding some spoilers for a 14-year-old DS and GBA game. But there were missed opportunities and some disappointments about this. But I thought that the final plot was so strong, and the arcs of Kazuma and Von Zieks and Sholmes and Iris, everyone in this game, like, you feel their growth, and I feel like everyone contributed to the story in like, there isn't a lot of wasted space except for a couple one-off witnesses like the redheaded league, but I thought they got a lot out of this medium-sized cast, and I was consistently impressed by the writing and those over-the-top wild animations. Oh man, I could not get enough of them. I couldn't.
Sollosi, Niki, I can't remember. Have you two played Ace Attorney versus Professor Layton?
Yes,
I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
The witch trials are a little bit like the juries in this game, but I thought, like, we don't need to go too deep into that game. I thought that game was like the Phoenix Wright parts and the Layton parts didn't go far enough, and ended up being like an okay version of both series. But it's not bad.
I agree 100%, but I would say that much of the Phoenix Wright sections do feel a bit like a prototype for this game.
Yes. The witch trials with individual jurors do feel like the jury segments in Great Ace Attorney. That I definitely felt that.
And the aesthetic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but was that the first time Phoenix was actually modeled in 3D?
I think so. I think
it came out before Spirit of Justice, I think.
I know that Shu Takumi's team, the creator of Ace Attorney, worked on that game, and then he started on Great Ace Attorney while sort of a Capcom B team made Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. Takumi's listed as like an exec producer, but not a writer or director of Ace Attorney 5 or 6. So I think that might be part of why Great Ace Attorney feels like a bigger production than those other two 3DS games. But again, we are playing a remastered version, so maybe that's influencing me a little bit too. But regardless, I think Great Ace Attorney is probably a must play if you're like us and have played most or all of the Phoenix Wright games and just love these. But if it's your first time playing, this is still not a bad choice, just because the narrative is so strong and doesn't have that many ties to the other games. Like it's a fair first choice, but I think a necessary game for fans. Because Niki, like, if we were ranking the boyfriends in this game, but how high could we go? 12?
Oh my god! Listen,
15?
So listen, Von Zieks I think is like probably my favorite prosecutor now. Kazuma is probably like my second favorite prosecutor.
I really like Godot, but I think that Von Zieks is a top 3 guy now for me.
Oh my god, yeah.
But Godot is still my number 1, for many reasons.
Yeah, and I mean, like, oh my gosh, I think what really made me like realize this game has not only the best boyfriends but just the best writing and the best crying is that I had my own like hopes for how the story would end up. I had my own hopes for, like, what are they gonna tell us about Clint? What are they gonna tell us about Genshin? And I didn't get what I wanted, and it was better than what I wanted, even though it hurt more. And I think that's really a good thing.
Yeah, and again, Clint, who is Barak's brother, and Genshin, who is Kazuma's father, are characters that we only meet in flashbacks because they're both dead before the start of the game.
Shades of Gregory.
But, yeah. Our views of them and what we think they did versus what actually happened evolves over the course of the game. That I thought was just it was just really smart writing. Like, again, the writing in these games can be very twisty, very convoluted, but it felt like a satisfying conclusion that was always, getting players uncertain and recontextualizing itself, but ultimately was just really good. This is a good mystery story.
There's some really like amazing parallels between Von Zieks and Kazuma And I just think that this game really, and the first game too, the first game did this very well. The second game, even better. The idea that good people can do bad things and those things aren't mutually exclusive is absolutely wild. Um, uh, there's very few characters who are clear cut. You are actually a despicable human being. Even Strongheart, it's, Ryunosuke realizes he really wants to fight crime and he really wants crime to stop and he really cares about forensic science. And that doesn't make anything okay. But he's not a 100% bad person. It's just so amazing how they managed to capture that and then make these parallels, not just with like, oh, the characters from the first two games in the series. No, like parallels with each other. Like Von Zeeks ends up having a really good parallel with Ryunosuke from Von Zeek's first case to episode 3 of the first game with Ryunosuke. And it's all thanks to Strongheart. Thanks, you jerk. But anyways, I mean, like, everything is so connected. Every thread is so thready. Like, it's just every case plays off of each other. And, like, holy moly, it's so good. I cried.
And I love how they made Strongheart's character not, like, obviously a despicable villain, but also him so deliberately keeping his hands clean. He never killed anyone. He always manipulated others into killing for him. And then he defends his actions as being for the greater good of London, and eventually even has the chanting crowd supporting him, only for when you take a step back and it's like, hey, the Queen has been listening to your plot all along, and listen to yourself. You're justifying murder just to frighten other criminals. Then you sort of, like, the crowd goes from cheering for him for realizing the horror that they're cheering for, and then watching Strongheart take a spectacular fall in his death scene.
The cheer is insane. The breakdown is insane. And that's it. It's the truth. We do not need to be in the darkness to fight the darkness. And then I cried. But you want to know why that's brilliant? Not only because it's brilliant, but did you notice, now I'm just going to say it, if you went, to Von Zeeks' little prosecutor office and you inspected everything like the good little inspectors you are, you're going to see he has a bunch of bats. And they do the animation where they come at you and it's like, oh snap, this is some Scooby-Doo level, bats are attacking me. But what does Strongheart have? Doves. Oh my god. Anyways, I'm gonna cry.
The evil one with, like, in white, and the good one in darkness. Oh, the doves and the bats. I didn't think about that.
Every day I cry. Oh my god. Anyways, this game is brilliant. You want to talk to me? Talk to me. I've got some Excel sheets. I'll talk to you about the themes. I'll talk to you about the future, the law trusting, the journalism, the dissatisfaction of the first game. Oh my god, everything is connected.
I do want to look into the future a little bit. Niki, you postulated the game that maybe a future game could be Holmes and Iris. Sholmes and Iris visiting Japan and going on an adventure there with maybe a third party as the main character, maybe one of them being the main character, maybe Ryunosuke coming back as the main character. We don't really know what's happening next for the Ace Attorney franchise. They've been quiet a little bit recently, although Capcom does have a big presentation at TGS later this month, which I'm really excited for. Not just
Fingers
because,
crossed.
not just because I want some new monsters in Rise, but like what would be, not necessarily our fan game, but what would be a game that for the future of Ace Attorney that would get you the most excited?
I mean, most excited? Because the reason why I say Investigations is mostly because, one, maybe then they could remaster Investigations 1 and 2 and we can finally get 2 in English, but also because I feel like it's kind of hard to follow this up. So an Investigations game would, like, temper people before the next game. But, oh my god, can Athena get her own game? Thank you.
Yeah, her one case in Spirit of Justice wasn't bad, but it felt like a token case for her, and that was disappointing to me.
Yeah, she needs, like, an actual game. I love that case, but I mean, like, that doesn't make up for, like, she needs a game.
Yeah, no, I really, really like Spirit of Justice, but that is Apollo's game, and Athena needs her own game.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I want I want to still live with these characters because I've gotten very attached to many of them, and I want a game with Holmes and his investigations, maybe with Mikotoba, maybe with the original cast back, interacting with the Karine clan. I want them to bring the supernatural stuff and spirit medium stuff from the older Phoenix Wright games into this cast and this setting.
That's interesting. I would like to see the contrast between the rationalist Sholmes and, well, magic.
Yeah, like him, Sholmes encountering spirit medium magic or Iris or any of them, and having those systems interact. Maybe with maybe introduce a new kind of mini game to to break down a witness, kind of like Apollo's bracelet or Athena's emotional analysis. But I want to see them. I want to see those things interact. The supernatural parts of old trilogy with Great Ace Attorney. What about you, Jono?
I'm just thinking about what you just said. I'm trying to figure out, when was Amy Faye? She was the founder of the Faye clan, and I can't remember when she lived, but that would work if she was at the beginning of the 20th century. I know she has the urn in the second game, but I can't remember when she lived.
I would have to check the wiki for plot details from Spirit of Justice to verify that. I don't remember all. I don't remember every detail. They could move this to a new city, new continent, new century. I would be interested in whatever they do, because I think that Shu Takumi is just a hell of a puzzle adventure game writer. Because lest we not forget, he also did Ghost Trick, Jono, a game that you and I know very well.
Oh, that reminds me of something I wanted to mention to you. Did some of the moves in the investigative theater sections remind you of anything?
A little bit. There was some dramatic gestures and dancing cop flashbacks.
Yeah, I loved that.
But mostly, I just love the finger snapping and dramatic lighting of those of the great deduction course correction sections, which were really they were never challenging, but they were really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't supposed to be challenging. I don't think they were supposed to be cinematic.
The game only got really challenging when you have like 4 pages of evidence in the last couple cases, and you're sort of combing through everything to make sure that the right peg is fitting into the right hole. But this game was not super hard, and again, I don't think it was that specific. I mentioned that there's way less pixel hunting and easier narrative to follow during the investigation segments.
Yep. What would I like to see in the next Ace Attorney game? To be completely honest, I mean, I'd love to see a Great Ace Attorney 3. I think the investigations game based around Sholmes would be really, really cool. I kind of want there to be a new story. I would really like to see a reboot taking place in the same world as Ace Attorney, but not necessarily starring Phoenix. Basically, kind of like a Judgment for Ace Attorney. So it takes place in the same world, everything's identifiable, but it can tell a completely new story. And alongside that, I'd like to see a solution to I know the solution to this problem, and I'm presenting the piece of evidence, but it's not the piece of evidence that I should present yet, so the game doesn't want me to. I'd like to see a solution to that problem with some branching paths. Maybe if you present a piece of evidence here instead of a piece of evidence there, you unlock different kinds of testimony.
Yeah, for as many menus you navigate and options you choose, these games are very linear. So if there was ever a way to design cases that there was more than one solution, would be really, really interesting. But that opens up some game design questions that I cannot answer.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think it would be really, really cool. Like in this game sort of set it up in the, was it the 3rd or the 4th case?
Oh, you mean when Sholmes said, go after the truth even when it seems like you have it, and then she gives I confessed already, you definitely don't need to figure out anything else, right? That's what you're talking about.
It's what I'm talking about. I would have liked to have seen that, but I would have liked to have seen it made less obvious to the point where you actually could miss it, and then maybe like things unfold there. Maybe that makes the follow-up cases more difficult. Maybe
that's
I mean, that's fair, but I feel like they did that because this is really when they start hinting like, oh, Sholmes got something going on. He actually really been thinking emoji Sholmes. That's what he's been doing.
I agree, but I'm not specifically talking about this case. I'm just saying at that point, if it was another Ace Attorney game, wouldn't it be cool if you could reach that point in another case, and if you didn't dig deeper, if you didn't present the right piece of evidence, you wouldn't come to the full conclusion to the case? I'd like to see that. And you could still make your way to a perfectly acceptable conclusion to the game, but I think that would add some replay value to it. That if you wanted to get like, I don't know, if you wanted to be able to unlock the final case or something like that.
Yes and no. I sort of don't agree with that, because I think that would mean having 3 times as much writing in the game, only for the player having to replay the game to see more of it. It would add replay value, but make the narrative way less satisfying if it's not as crafted and specific as it is in a single track. I actually like linear games a lot of the time, because I think that gives the authors as much control as possible over the narrative and allows them to use, literary devices and dialogue in a specific way that serves the story better. It would be a completely different game if there was branching paths and alternate outcomes to cases. And I'm not 100% sure I want that, although that is a really interesting game narrative design.
I feel like it could probably be fixed that there were no branching paths until the final case. Because up to that means you don't have to replay the whole game. You just need to play the final case in order to figure out the things. And up to that point, it could be linear. But I would like to see a little bit more varying paths in cases. Like if you present, like you have 2 pieces of evidence. If you present one piece of evidence, you can follow one train of logic. If you present another piece, you could follow another train of logic. And just really, really open it up like that. And I agree with you, Mike. That would, again, it would make things much more complicated, but I think that's where the game logically wants to go next.
No, what they want to do next is make it so that you can pick which prosecutor is your boyfriend, and then you get like the super secret ending where you date both of them. That's where it's going next. Depending on what you pick in the courtroom, they be like swooning over you. That's all I'm gonna say. That's the next logical step for the series.
Okay, so whether it's branching paths or dateable rivals and villains, or similar games with new characters or places, there's a lot of interesting ways that Ace Attorney can go forward. And I have not been following the news that closely, but I don't know what Shu Takumi's team is doing. I hope he's still he hasn't like left Capcom or something. But there's with the first new game in several years coming out, I think there's more excitement around Ace Attorney in the West than there has been in a while, and that is just really exciting. I love these games. I want more of them. These 2 were awesome, but the second one does really predicate on playing the first one. You can't play them out of order, but put together are one of the best Ace Attorney experiences. Do we basically agree? Or
I completely agree, and I think that part of the joy of playing this, if you have been an Ace Attorney fan for years, is the way that the game plays with the archetypes of the characters, like who's the Edgeworth, who's the Mia, who's the who's the Pearl, for example. And it plays with those expectations in a really, really smart way, and in Niki's case, maybe a cruel way.
Yeah, no, that was the whole point, right? Because, like, what are these games about? What is the Ace Attorney series about? It's about trust. And, just like in the beginning, you can't quite trust Sholmes's deductions, you can't trust yourself because you are going into it with these certain expectations in mind. But surprise, they were both Edgeworth all along. Yeah.
To me, these games are about the pursuit of truth and justice, and all the major characters in this game had their own idea of justice and approached it a different way. And Sholmes's approach was to be fast and loose with the truth, but ultimately being maybe the most shining example of someone seeking truth and justice of anyone. There's so much to these characters. I'm almost just more inclined to play another game with a lot of the same cast because I like them so much. But anyway, if we're talking about metaphors of truth and justice and boyfriends and linear paths, we are maybe talking about a different game. So I think it's time to end the episode. Listeners, thank you so much for this myriad winding discussion about the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I thought these games were great. I wholeheartedly recommend them. We've spoiled basically all of them. So if you came into this podcast cold and were expecting a slightly vaguer tone, we're sorry, but not sorry. But also thank you, Niki and Jono, for how do I put this? Putting up with me for this podcast, because I delayed the recording a couple times. I was this one was a little challenging to schedule, but I'm glad we were able to come together and talk about this game that all 3 of us really, really liked.
Mike, it was a 70-hour game, and you're playing like 7 other games for the podcast. giving you a little bit of flexibility is the very least that we could do.
Thank you for listening to my testimony and all the evidence I provided of how Ryunosuke is married to Von Zeeks and to Kazuma. Thanks. I now declare them yes married.
I would press that statement for more information, but I think we are sort of in the housekeeping phase of the podcast right now, and I think we should move it along. The rest of September we already have lined up. Next week is going to be another fantasy draft podcast, this time for characters and monsters and what have you of the Persona series. So a Persona fantasy draft coming next week. After that, we are doing another quiz show episode. This is our 4th quiz show in about 3 years, and I still have a lot of questions to write before we record those. So I know part of what I'm doing for the rest of my evening. But also in September, we're doing 2 episodes on Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, which was a PS1 game that is the second half of the Persona 2 duology. We got the first half in the 2010s and the second half in the 2000s. It's a little confusing, but we're going to navigate all of it. And that is a hell of an Atlas story. So I'm really excited to talk Persona 2 on this podcast in a couple of weeks. But we also have parts of October planned out. The October Game Journal game is Cosmic Star Heroine, which is somehow one of the most and least retro games we've ever done, because it is a relatively newer game at around, I think it came out in 2016 or 2017, but it is styled after the 16-bit games of yore. So it is a modern game with some old school sensibilities that I started many years ago but never finished. So I'm going to use a clean save file to play through Cosmic Star Heroine next month and then talk to y'all about it. But listeners, if you want to email us about Persona 2 or Cosmic Star Heroine or the Great Ace Attorney or Fantasy Drafts or Alex Trebek, you can just email retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on RPG Fan's message boards or front page stories. Visit our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTube, our Twitch, something streaming or appearing just about every day on all of those things. Retro Encounter is also not the only podcast on RPG Fan. We also have Random Encounter, mostly about randomness, mostly every 2 weeks, of which you, Jono, are one of its hosts.
Indeed I am, and we are actually moving the podcast to alternating Mondays now. We used to post on like Friday, Saturday, but now it's going to be every second Monday, alternating with Rhythm Encounter, which I suspect you're just about to talk about.
Indeed I am. Random Encounter is one of our flagship podcasts. Our third is Rhythm Encounter, about RPG music, with Random and Rhythm owning Mondays and Retro posting usually Thursday or Friday. It looks like we're going to have a pretty consistent 2 podcasts a week schedule for those on the RPG Fan main page. But in addition to those 3, we have a 4th podcast, Phoenix Edge, our partner podcast, mostly weekly, mostly about current events, but they talk about a lot of different things on that show. So please listen to Random Encounter, Retro Encounter, Rhythm Encounter, and Phoenix Edge, and review all of those on your preferred listening venue, whether it is Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, Podcatcher, Pod something. I'm sure you're listening to us somehow. Please rate and review us and provide feedback. We love feedback. But let's give the listeners another way to provide feedback to us at a more individual level, starting with you, Jono.
Sure, you can find me at Jono Logan on Twitter, or you can, if you listen to Random and you want to send an email to us to answer a question on the show, send it to podcast@rpgfan.com.
And Niki, how can listeners find you?
I'm on Twitter at Otome_Niki, OTOME_NIKI. There's only one K. If there were 2, that would be a diary.
Indeed. Oh boy, I have read a manga called Mirai Nikki, and that is one of the more disturbing manga I've ever read. So examine Japanese stories with Nikki in the title with caution, listeners.
Oh, but that's because that's the diary.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a diary, I'm Nikki.
Got it. So that was Jono, that was Niki, and this is Sollosi. You can find me on the social media most easily via Twitter. I'm at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoca for Dogs other times. You can also find me on the RPG Fan Discord as Monsoon Mike. So hold it. Thank you. Good night. Good luck.
Von Zeeks did nothing wrong.